Hello friend, hope you are well. Welcome back to another video. If you are new around here, I just wanted to say hello. In today's video, we are going to be looking at an autofocus adapter from K&F Concept. They reached out just in general asking if I would be interested in reviewing any of their products, and this one really caught my eye because it looked like a budget alternative to the Fringer EF-FX PRO II adapter that I regularly use with my Fujifilm cameras, and I thought that reviewing it might be helpful for you guys if you guys have been considering doing something similar, shooting video with EF glass on Fuji cameras. And so they sent it over, and today's video is just kind of my first impressions, kind of talking you guys through my thoughts on it, how it compares to the Fringer, and who I would recommend this adapter for. Before we get into my thoughts on this adapter, I just wanted to preface a few things. The first is that these are just my personal opinions based on my use cases. I think autofocus performance is somewhat subjective, and everyone's going to have different thoughts on what is good, what is great, what is not acceptable. And so for the most part, I have loved the autofocus that I've gotten out of the Fringer adapter, and I'm going to be primarily comparing it to that over my 3+ years of experience with it. The next thing is that not all Canon lenses and Fuji cameras are going to interact the same. I'm going to be primarily talking about the Fujifilm X-H2S as well as the X-T3, and we're also going to be looking at the Sigma Art 18-35, the 24-70, and then the Canon EF 24mm pancake lens. Those are the cameras and lenses that I regularly use, and so we're just going to be looking at those. You might have different experiences if you use Canon L series glass or other older Canon photo lenses. As with all videos on my channel, we're not going to get super highly technical. I'm going to try and do a good job of sharing my thoughts on this, showing you guys some footage as well and some real world examples, and then hopefully you can make a decision if this adapter is right for you. There's not a ton of features to go over when it comes to a lens adapter. I think most people understand how they work. This allows you to put Canon EF series lenses on your Fuji X-mount cameras. It gives you access to electronic features like the aperture control as well as autofocus. And it's important to note that this is not a speed booster, and so the focal lengths of your lenses will not be changing. Real quick, let's just talk Fuji autofocus in general. It's definitely not the point of this video, but in short, Fuji autofocus is good. It is not the industry leader, but it is fine by my use cases. I primarily use point-based autofocus and set my focus area with the box. And for a scenario like this, where I'm the only face in the frame, I will use the face tracking as well as the eye detection feature. I am filming on the K&F Concept adapter. You guys will see any pulsing in this video or if it misses focus, and hopefully that is a good example of kind of the performance of this lens in a pretty controlled talking head scenario like this. When it comes to my history adapting Canon lenses, we have to go back to 2019. I owned the X-T3 and I bought the Fringer adapter to adapt the 18-35, the 24-70, as well as the Canon 24mm pancake lens. Since then, I've gotten the X-H2S, but through and through, the Fringer adapter has remained consistent. I've loved the results that I've gotten out of it for personal as well as professional projects. I trust it and regularly put it in scenarios where I'm dependent on autofocus. Although Fuji autofocus in general is not perfect, I have really loved this adapter, and so when I'm looking at the K&F Concept adapter, I've really just been comparing it to my experience using the Fringer over the last 3 to 4 years. I felt like I was able to tell pretty easily how this adapter felt in comparison to my history with the Fringer. When it comes to my overall impressions of the K&F Concept adapter, I can confidently say that this is a very solid budget alternative to the Fringer. It's definitely not perfect, but when it comes to how the autofocus performs, I have noticed very little difference between this and the Fringer adapter. I think if I was blindly handed the camera, I would not be able to tell which adapter I was using. I think face tracking feels identical, and just like with the Fringer, old photo lenses like the 18-35 might still feel a little bit jumpy, but newer focus-by-wire lenses have a much smoother transition. To showcase some of these differences, here's the Fujifilm X-H2S along with my 3 different lenses. First up, we have the Sigma Art 24-70 at 70mm, and you can see the smooth transition between the foreground and the background. I don't often use it in this way, but I'm showing you these tests as this is a way that a lot of people like to use their autofocus. Next up, you'll notice the Sigma Art 18-35 is much more jumpy between the foreground and the background. That is not because of the Fujifilm or the adapter, it is just because this is a much older lens that was primarily designed for stills. This last comparison is with the 24mm pancake, and you'll see similar to the Sigma Art 24-70 is quite smooth the way it transitions and racks focus. And following that up are just some face tracking tests. This is me just walking around in my backyard. This first test is the 18-35 set at 24mm and f2.8. You guys will see these adapters behave really similarly. I didn't really notice much of a difference. I think this is a great example of how you can trust the autofocus on these adapters. In this next test, I set the Sigma 18-35 at 35mm and f1.8 to see if that would make a difference. Again, I didn't really notice a big difference as it seemed to hold focus the whole time. I didn't really notice any big jumps or it losing focus. I did have the face tracking set to on in all of these clips, as this is a scenario where when there's just one subject, I would use the face tracking. This last example is a little bit more extreme with the Sigma at 24-70 set at 70mm. Again, you'll kind of see me move side to side. I do have the face tracking turned on, and I did not really notice a difference between the two adapters. The 24-70 always behaves really great with the Fujifilm X-H2S and didn't really notice any main differences here. When it comes to the main differences between this adapter and the Fringer, as well as some potential cons, the first is that there is no aperture ring on the K&F concept adapter. I think this could be problematic for Fuji users that are really used to changing aperture on the fly with the barrel of the lens. This is on all Fuji lenses as well as the Fringer adapter, and is something that is kind of pretty common for using Fuji cameras. I did want to mention you can assign the aperture control on the X-T3 to the dial, and as well as a button on the X-H2S. So this kind of just adds a different step to changing your aperture. On the X-T3, you can simply push the front dial in, and that will switch from either ISO or shutter speed, whichever one you have set, to the aperture control, and you can change it with the dial, and then you can click it again to send it back. And very similar on the X-H2S, you can assign a lot of the different custom buttons on the camera to switch to aperture control, and you can change it with a dial and then go back. So I know for some this could be a big con. I just kind of am pointing it out as a difference, as I regularly shoot wide open on the Sigma Art 18-35, and especially if I'm using an ND filter, I'm not actually touching my aperture that often, but I did want to mention it as that is one of the kind of cons of this adapter. The next difference is that the K&F concept actually does come with a lens support mount. This is not something that I personally have use for, but I just wanted to mention it in case you would have a use for that if you're using much longer lenses and you would love to support the lens, on rails or a monopod of some sort. K&F concept does have a detachable mount that allows you to add support to the lens adapter. This might feel like a small thing, but aesthetically, the adapters are a little bit different. The K&F concept has this orange ring, and the Fringer just kind of sticks more straightforward with the all black and silver design. I personally don't love the look of the orange ring. It's not the biggest deal, but if aesthetics are important to you, I think that's something to know on this adapter. The biggest difference between the adapters that I think most people are going to care about is the price. And that's why I'm making this video. The Fringer adapter is $350 and the K&F concept adapter is $200. That's $150 in savings, especially if you have to buy multiple of them for multiple Fuji cameras like I own. I think that adds up, and it's definitely something worth considering if you are more at a budget price point or just not wanting to spend a ton of money on a lens adapter. When it comes to who this adapter is for, there are a few people that come to mind. The first is just a budget-conscious video shooter. You might be turned off by the high price tag of the Fringer, or you're just not really sure about using Canon lenses with Fuji, if you will like it. I think if you are just looking for a good, solid autofocus adapter at a lower price point, I don't think you can go wrong with the K&F concept adapter. I think if you have the budget, I would encourage people to go with the Fringer just because it has been so solid, and I have not had enough testing with the K&F concept adapter to let anyone know how long it lasts or really what the performance is like in more extreme conditions. I think this lens adapter is also for someone who doesn't really care about those small details. So one thing would be the aperture ring. That's not a big deal for you. I think this adapter could potentially be for you, as well as the lens support. If that would be nice, I think that is an added feature that does not come with the Fringer. And I think those two little things could sway someone towards picking up this adapter over the Fringer. The last person that I can recommend this adapter for is someone who owns multiple camera setups. And so for me personally, I own the Fujifilm X-H2S as well as 2 Fujifilm X-T3s. And with that, I own 3 Fringer EF-FX PRO II adapters, which definitely added up when I was purchasing them and was not my favorite, but it's just been so nice to be able to have access to 3 different cameras for some of the shoots that I'm doing. And so I think if you are in my shoes where you maybe already have an A camera setup and you're considering a B or a C cam and you're not really wanting to spend that $350 again on the Fringer, I think this adapter is plenty fine as long as the aperture control does not bother you. I think that'd be a really easy way to save some money on your other setups. Thank you guys so much for checking out this video, and thanks to K&F Concept for sending this over. As with all the videos that I make about products on this channel, I'm not paid to say anything. They simply sent me the product and told me to make a review about it, sharing my honest thoughts or an unboxing, whatever I wanted to make. And so just wanted to show you guys just this comparison to a product that I regularly use as a budget alternative. I love finding videos like this where people are showcasing a product that, yeah, it's just a cheaper option to something that is kind of the most common option out there, that is the Fringer. And so please drop a question down below if I can help in any way, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.